Hello everyone, my name is Chloe and today I am here with a brand new video. Welcome to Brunette Bibliophile, where I post bookish videos and writing content. Today I am here with a staple of July of every year, and that is the mid-year book freakout tag. We are a little over halfway through the year, which I don't know how, but today we're going to kind of be talking about some of my reading stats and things that I've read so far this year and things that are still to come this year. So there are set questions that we'll get to, but we're going to talk about some stats first. So let's start with my Goodreads goal. This year my goal is to read 150 books. Last year I read about 154, so I definitely find that this to be a feasible goal for me. Last year I was planning my wedding. This year I'm not planning anything, so I have a little bit more time on my hands. So currently, of the 150, I have read 77, and I'm 3 books ahead of schedule. I was about 6 or 7 books ahead of schedule, but I slowed down a little bit, so I gotta pick up the pace. And I'm just gonna do a couple of stats here, nothing extensive like what I keep on my own spreadsheet, but just give you a couple of random ones. So out of those 77 books, I have owned 39 of them, and I have not owned 35 of them. So a good mix of library and physically owned. I've unhauled 2 books that I've read, and I have digitally owned 1 of them, so if I own it as an ebook. Between adult, young adult, and middle grade, I have read mostly adult this year with 48 books. YA I have read 23, and middle grade I've read 5. Children's I've read 1, but I think it was just like a little golden book. And for subgenre, the most I've read is romance with 35, and the second most was actually fantasy with 15. Out of all 77 books that I have read this year, 16 of them have been rereads. The reread game is very strong right now this year, mostly because of my work group that wants to buddy read like whole series together. That's where a bulk of my rereads have come from. And another little stat that I'll give you is out of all of the books that I've read so far this year, for their release year, most of them have been published earlier than 2017. So I have read 24 books that were published before 2017, and the second largest category is 2022, where I've read 21 releases from that year. So let's get into the questions. I have not pulled any answers for this ahead of time, and we're just going to go one by one through them. So the first question is, what is the best book that I've read so far in 2023? And for that one, I think I'm going to go with Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I was very fortunate to actually get an arc of this book, and I had such a fun time with it. Ali Hazelwood is one of my favorite authors, and I also got invited to be a part of a blog tour for this book's release, and I will link that review video in the description below. It's probably my most popular video so far this year, and it only has a little over 100 views. The second question is the best sequel that I've read so far this year. And if I'm being honest, I have not read many sequels this year. A couple of sequels that I have read and enjoyed so far this year, I'll just give you a few here, include Wicked Beauty by Katie Robert, Finlay Donovan Jumps the Gun by Elle Cosimano. That may actually be one of the best that I've read so far this year. The Kraken Sacrifice, also by Katie Robert, and Well Traveled by Jen DeLuca. I'm so glad this question is here, but favorite reread. One of them has definitely been The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I did an annotated reread of this, and my annotated copy is currently with Desiree from Librelabra, who is doing her own annotations. This was a really fun one. But also the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas. This was a big reread that I had been planning on doing for a while, and an opportunity arose to do it with some of my friends. And we used the dramatized adaptation audiobooks, which are phenomenal. Full cast, sound effects, absolutely amazing. We still have one more reread to do in that series. We are done through A Court of Frost and Starlight. I recommend the dramatized versions so much because some people know, if you follow my channel long enough, that when I read A Court of Thorns and Roses, I did not like it at all. And I didn't really start to enjoy the series until about halfway through Asimov. But rereading A Court of Thorns and Roses with the dramatized adaptation actually made it a better reading experience, and I raised my rating of the book. It was such a good experience. A genre that you have been loving / reading the most. I read a lot of romance. That is my top genre. Something that I've actually been reading a lot recently is fantasy. And by a lot, I mean I've read 15 this year, but 15 fantasy within a 6-month time period is actually kind of a lot for me. a new release that you have not read yet but want to. There are so many. Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Score. I actually have not been keeping up with anticipated releases as much as I was last year, but it's a work in progress. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. For that, I'm going to go with Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. This is her young adult debut, and I'm very interested to see if I still enjoy her work in a young adult setting, because I am kind of moving away from YA books. The biggest disappointment that I have read so far this year was probably Cursed by Marissa Meyer. This one right here. I think maybe if I tried to read Gildan and Cursed back to back, it might raise my rating, but I didn't really enjoy it this time around. The bulk of this book is just searching, which if you've read Gilded, you'll understand what that means. I don't want to say it without spoiling it, but I was a little disappointed with this one. The biggest surprise read for me this year was probably Cinder and Glass by Melissa de la Cruz. This is a Cinderella retelling that is set in the 1800s, but the prince does a kind of like competition to pick his bride. And there's also a little bit of a love triangle. This was definitely a surprising read for me, but I ended up giving it 5 stars, and it was for book club, so I'll link that live show in the description below, but I really enjoyed it. So this next question is asking who my favorite new author is, and it could be debut or new to me. I don't know if I have any like dead set favorites, but I can give you a couple of authors that I've read from this year that I will be picking up more from. Sav R. Miller, I read Promises and Pomegranates from, and I really enjoyed that, and I'm looking forward to the next book. Anna Huang, I read a second book from her this year, but I'm starting to dip my toes more into her work, and I'm enjoying it. So we'll kind of see where the other books take me. Megan Bannon, I read The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy from her, and I really enjoyed that. If she writes something similar, I'll probably pick it up. I don't think I'm going to go back and read her fantasy though. And Amy Leah, I read Set on You and X's and O's. Really loved Set on You, so I definitely am keeping an eye on some of the other stuff she releases. I have not had a book make me cry so far this year, but a book that made me really happy, as far as like rereads are concerned, was The Love Hypothesis. I really liked remembering why I really loved that book and when I originally read it, and annotating it with my friend is going to be such a fun time. For the most beautiful book that I've bought so far this year, I actually don't have it yet, but it is purchased, and it is the Illumicrate Bridgerton set. They finally did a reprint because I missed the first go around, and this is such a gorgeous set. I know I'm going to love it when it gets here. I originally was not planning on buying it, and then after it sold out in the first set and I started seeing people getting it, that's when the regret was setting in, so I made sure to get it on this reprint round. And then the last question I'm going to answer is, what are some books that you need to read before the year is up? For me, it is my Book of the Month books. I am so behind on my Book of the Month challenge, and I definitely want to reread the oldest ones that I've gotten from them because next year they won't count towards the challenge anymore. I think there's still 2 that I need to read that are like my oldest ones, but any of those I want to get to as soon as possible. So that is all I have for the mid-year book freakout tag. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it. As always, if you like what you see, please go ahead and click subscribe. I post new videos every week, so click subscribe so you can be updated for when I post those. Thank you all so much, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!
In the darkness, I don't feel so cold.